Hi, this is the Awkward Mind Podcast. I'm Yuri Nair. My guest today is Dr. Karydes. He's an emergency physician, medical toxicologist, and a medical director based in Illinois. He works with physicians, nurses, and paramedics across the country, helping them beat burnout so that they may learn, grow, and thrive in both their personal and professional, to live a life fulfilled. His mission is just to assist them in this journey by giving them the courage and the tools needed to help them learn, grow, and prosper in the important areas of their lives. Each week, he provides specific, actionable resources so they can build a curriculum that serves them in their current life. Every resource is created with them in mind and can be found on the Medicine Revive platform. Here to talk about the challenges facing our medical professionals and the success secrets that can help them and all of us avoid burnout. Please welcome Dr. Karydes. Dr. Harry, welcome to the Awkward Mind Podcast.
My goodness, what an intro. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for the opportunity and thanks for giving me the chance to speak with your audience. I'm looking forward to it.
I am as well. I'm really excited to have you on, and I think the work that you're doing is very important. So I'm excited to unpack some of it. So Dr. Harry, maybe set the stage for us a little bit. What was it like growing up?
I actually had a wonderful childhood. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I actually grew up in Chicago proper, born and raised in Chicago proper, toward the outskirts of it, but Chicago nonetheless. And, I knew from a young age that, math and science was for me. That was just how my mind worked. Even now with my own children, I'll bring my children over to my parents' house, and my mom would say, this child of yours, he reminds me a lot of like you were, and he'll be there tinkering with a Lego, for example, or just trying to build something. That was me. That was my childhood. I always knew that was my mind. Whereas my sister was quite the opposite. She was very much right-brained in that aspect. She was very creative. She's a writer now, and she does quite a bit of marketing. But I was always on the math and sciences. So even from a young age, I knew that was my path. And as I entered, high school, I really thrived in the math and sciences. It just, for me, it clicked. It seemed to work for me. And I know some of the others it doesn't, but I struggled with the arts, for example, with the writing. But math and science seemed to click for me. And that was just my path as when I entered into undergrad and then into the medical school.
And what inspired you to become a doctor?
I'll be honest with you, it actually came, so I actually, now being in it, I realized it was maybe a false perception of it, but I love cars. I've always loved cars, even since I was a child, fast cars, race cars, I love them all. And when my sister was in high school, she was a candy striper. And for maybe some of your younger listeners, they may not know what a candy striper is, but she was a volunteer at that point at the hospital that was near our home. And she was actually working, she then became a candy striper, and then she ended up working in the x-ray department. And at that time, x-rays, we view our x-rays and all our images now on a machine called the PACS machine, which is basically one big computer screen. But at that time, somebody actually had to load those films on a light box, where you might see in some older movies, or probably some places throughout the world still use the old hard copy x-ray films. And somebody actually has to load them on there. And that was my sister's job in the x-ray department. She had to load the x-ray films for the radiologist to read. And there was one radiologist there who I still remember. His name was Dr. Otto, who had a beautiful neon green Porsche 911 Turbo, a beautiful one. And I remember saying to myself, like, my goodness, he has a pretty awesome ride. And I figured that was, I'd like to get one of these things one day. I don't have my Porsche just quite yet, but I remember thinking, like, this is a good life, and it's knowing that my mind was toward math and sciences. I figured math or medicine was my path to achieve the goal that I wanted to, which was that in high school. My goals have significantly changed since that time, but that was where my path was, my first inkling of I wanted to do medicine.
Fascinating. And you still want that Porsche?
I'll get my Porsche one of these days, but my love of medicine has grown, exponentially, and I cherish it every single day, just because I have a skill set and a mind, but I think more importantly, I have a heart for, helping people. So I think that's what's important. I think, while I initially probably started looking at medicine as more of a status thing, I've completely changed the way I've looked at medicine now. And I know when I have the opportunity to speak with younger people, I always encourage them, you have to have not only the mind for it, but you really need the heart for it. And if you don't have the heart, you're not going to thrive in this field. It's an incredibly stressful field, but a wonderfully, wonderfully important field that heals me more than I have the opportunity to help others. And that's really what has been my biggest strength in medicine. I have a heart for it. I still enjoy doing it, even though it can be stressful some days. I mean, I'm an emergency physician, so some days are more stressful than others.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine being out on the front lines, especially with everything going on in the last few months.
Yeah.
Take a step back before we get into that, because I know this is the Awkward Mind podcast, and I know you had an awkward moment of your own just starting out. So would you share that with the audience?
So medicine is very, very humbling. And one of the great things about medicine is you always have more senior members, be it a nurse, be it a physician, be it a professor. There are always those who've gone before you. And your role now as where I am at right now is to teach the younger generation. But when I was a very junior resident, this is probably one of my most awkward moments in medicine, is, I was a young junior resident, and I worked at a level 1 trauma center. And for those listeners of yours who are not in the US, it's the trauma center. This is what you probably envision when you see movies. I was at a trauma center, and a very, very busy trauma center, where, we get our gunshots, our stabbings. Those are common things that we see every day, but we also get our medical problems, heart attacks, strokes. We see that's a common thing that we see every day. And one of the things in medicine, especially in emergency medicine, is you have to learn very, very early, how to identify who's sick and who's not sick. And to my perhaps a little more of an overconfident younger mind, I was like, how is that hard? You know that someone's sick versus not sick, but it's actually a very, very difficult thing to get. So I can remember a very specific patient that I had. They brought him into a resuscitation bay, and he was actually altered, very, very altered, very lethargic. But he'd go between, being almost unresponsive and just being violent with us. And I remember just asking him, like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And I thought he was, either shot or, or something. He was on something, either he had overdosed on something. So it's very common in medicine, when somebody's completely altered, you shear their clothes off, and it's just a matter of, you have to examine him, and you can't examine people with their clothes on. So you ask, your crew to help you to shear their clothes off. And I was more worried about his life. Is he having a stroke? Is he shot somewhere? So I remember I asked the nurses to just shear his clothes off. And we got to get him over to the CAT scanner, thinking that he probably has a brain bleed of some sort. And I remember my senior nurse at that point, and I still remember her name. His name is Rara. That was her name, Rara. And she's like, hey, doctor, his sugar's 21. His blood glucose is 21. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And, for our non-medical people, a blood glucose of 21 is incredibly low. It's incredibly low. It should be 80 to 110, perhaps. That's a normal value for us. So when somebody is very, very hypoglycemic or low sugar, this is a very common presentation that they have. And we gave him, some sugar through some dextrose through his IV, and he became completely normal, like you and I are talking right now. And it was a very humbling moment for me to sometimes, try to listen to your more senior staff, hey, let's wait till we get a blood sugar on this guy, which takes just 30 seconds to get, before we shear off this man's clothes. And we could have saved him and us a lot of work.
And so you mentioned a little bit earlier that obviously the work can be very stressful. And so it makes sense that sometimes you want to just jump in, right? And just go and not take that step back. So is it situations like that made you sort of realize and start to want to learn about burnout in the medical profession? Because we hear about it all the time, unfortunately. And
well, I think for me, so with critical patients, being in emergency medicine or in critical care medicine, you're trained very, very early on. When you have somebody who's very, very ill in front of you, you have a very set sequence of events. So you have to kind of go through in your mind, and you kind of work your way through it. Specific to me, though, with burnout, I actually had a very specific event that had happened to me, which I'd like to share with your audience. I've been in medicine now for well over a decade, and several years ago, as an ER doctor, you always know the kind of night your night doctor had as soon as you walk in through the doors. You walk in through the ambulance bay doors, and you just need to look at that person's eyes, and you know exactly the type of night that they had. And I remember I saw my buddy Mark, who had what I knew was an absolutely miserable night. I can see it in his eyes. I can see it in his face. It was a mentally and physically exhausting day for him. But we exchanged our pleasantries, and I got into the business of working. And it was a 6 a.m. shift, I remember, and I had seen 6 patients by 7 o'clock. And, by those standards, that's a pretty good clip. That's a pretty good amount, it's a pretty good crew of patients, a pretty good volume of patients to see at such an early morning. But I remember saying to myself, I was leaving a patient's room who had a pretty large thumb laceration that needed to be repaired. And that would have taken me actually some time to repair it because it was a large laceration. And I remember feeling very dejected, very sad as I was leaving the room, thinking to myself, I've got all these patients that I've seen, and I'm going to have to do this repair that's going to take me some time. But I remember what happened very vividly. I can see my triage nurse just running from the triage area, which is 50 feet from the main department, just running with a 3-month-old child in her arms. And I could see from even 20 feet away, that child was blue, which means that child's not getting oxygen. So the great thing about emergency medicine is we go back to our training. So the whole team got in there. We started to resuscitate this child, but after an hour, we just couldn't resuscitate the child. It was just, in spite of all our efforts, we just couldn't bring that child back. And I remember, sitting back in my computer at my workstation, and then in that time that we were trying to resuscitate that child, which was about an hour's time, 8 patients had signed in to be seen in the emergency department. And I remember the first thing that came to my mind was, oh my goodness, how am I going to see all these patients, and how am I going to chart on all these patients? That was the first thing that came to my mind. I didn't even have a moment to grieve with the mother. I didn't have a moment to even grieve with my nurses, or even have a moment for myself. My first thought that came to my mind was, how am I going to get through the shift? How am I going to get through the day? And that came to me. I was like, that is horrible. I remember sitting there in front of my computer, I go, this is what people are talking about. This is what burnout is. And what was worse is I went through the shift, and I came home, and I have a beautiful and a lovely wife, and who I love dearly, and I have 2 children. And I remember coming home, and I remember saying to myself, I don't want to burden my wife with just what happened with my day. And that was another red flag for me. I'm like, why? My wife I've been with for, my goodness, over 10 years now. I remember saying, why wouldn't I want to tell my wife about my day? And, at that time, my wife would put one child to bed, and I would put the other child to bed. And I remember sitting in front of my computer after I put my child to bed, and getting on the internet and Googling the word physician burnout. And I remember saying to myself, this is it. I'm not looking for what is burnout. You are when you're at the point when you're typing physician burnout on Google, you're not getting there. You're already there. And I remember looking at what the Google search provided for me at that time, and it was not helpful. It wasn't helpful for me at all. What I needed some very specific, actionable resources to help me in that moment, and in the moments for the next coming days and next coming weeks. I didn't find it. And as lots of things in this world, if you scratch your own itch, I think you realize you're gonna have quite a bit of value. And I said to myself that day, there's no more. I'm gonna get myself through this, and I'm gonna talk about it. I think that's the first thing that I realized is we have to talk about it. So I've been blogging and podcasting since that day. And it's just become, a really big movement that I'm really hoping to share with as many people, physicians, nurses, paramedics, who are interested in not only beating burnout, but preventing themselves from even getting to that place. I'm helping them achieve a wellness that they're looking for.
Well, I think it's certainly a great mission. I guess I didn't realize. So this was fairly recent.
So it was probably, so what's unique about this was probably about almost 3 years ago, because life happens, things happen for a reason. I'm a very firm believer in that. And shortly after this event, I was asked to become the medical director for our emergency department. And that turned out to be the best thing for me. Because, I then became a student of studying leaders. I just became a student of leaders because I wanted to become a good leader, and I'm still learning every single day. But what I realized very, very early in this is to become a great leader, you need some very specific rituals. You need some very specific habits to become a great leader. And, I look toward the leaders of like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, these guys have Zuckerbergs, these guys have very specific ways they bookend their mornings and their nights. And a lot of those things I can translate and also use in the world of medicine as it relates to burnout. So it was fortuitous that, I had this horrible event, but then I was also given the opportunity to lead, which is what I've been doing since that time.
That's incredible. So I guess then you started reading more books on leadership, or have you always been a reader and just reading those success books?
So I've always been a reader. I've always loved that. But since that time, I have exponentially read so much more. I typically try to do a book a week. So, and I do it any way I can. I do it I kid with my wife because, we have TVs in the house, but the last time I can tell you I've watched a TV show, it's been probably, well over a year. It's not something if I have 15 minutes, I'm going to read. I'm not going to watch a show. Not there's anything wrong with watching shows, but I find more value. I find more enjoyment in reading because it's in those books that I learn more that I can apply for not only myself, but I can learn more to help serve, the people I'm trying to serve. So I'm not a book a week. I'm surely a book every other week without a question.
Wow, that's amazing. And what are you reading now?
So I just finished the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. This is, again, my second go around with it. I always read, we've talked about this maybe offline, The Magic of Thinking Big. That's one of my favorites. I read that twice a year. Those are the books. At one time, I have to read one book cover to cover before I start my next book. That's not the case anymore for me. I really read a bunch of books at the same time. I'm rereading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's another great one. Atomic Habits. That's another one. It's on my nightstand right now. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Those are my probably the 3 ones that I'm actively reading right now.
Grit is the one that I actually want to explore with you a little bit more because I heard because you covered it in your podcast episode. I thought it was fascinating. I think it'll be interesting for the listeners as well. This idea of nuance versus novelty.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
So I think what happens a lot of times, and I can tell you specific in medicine, is the best way I can kind of explain it for your listeners who may not know the trajectory of how it is to become a doctor. I think, let me explain that first. I think maybe we can understand what grit is more. So the trajectory is, you finish your undergrad, your college years, and then you go off to medical school, which is 4 years. And then after medical school, you enter your residency, and it's called different things throughout the world, but in the US, it's called the residency. And that's broken up anywhere between 3 years, depending on your specialty, to it could be 6, 7, 8 years. For emergency medicine, it's typically 3, and now it's more going toward 4 years of post-medical school training. So if you think about it, by the time you finish 4 years of college, 4-year medical schools, and then 4 years of residency, you've now reached that status of an attending, which is you're basically a solo. You could practice without the supervision of somebody else. You've attained that skill set after you pass your certifying exams. And what happens in medicine is you've been preparing for this day practically your entire life. I can very vividly remember, in high school, you have to be a good student to get into a good college. And in good college, you had to be a great student to even be considered for medical school. And then once you get into medical school, it becomes even more competitive because you have to land that residency spot that you want to go to because you want to get the best training. So what happens is after you graduate from residency, many of us just let out a big exhale. We're like, we've reached it, we're done. And then that's, I think, where the problem starts with many of us. And that's where I think where we start seeing burnout is because we look at graduating residency or completing residency successfully as your destination. You've reached your destinations, you've landed, you're done, and there's no more work to be done. But what I've been trying to tell the people that I work with is, friends, that's only just the beginning. And if you're looking for a successful and a thriving career in medicine, you have to be able to put in the work to get you there. And grit is exactly what that is. You know, what we found, and especially Angela Duckworth, who's really a master at this, who spent her lifetime talking about grit, is it's not necessarily the smartest person who's the most successful. It's the person who's willing to put in the work, the one who's not afraid of being bored. You know, I've talked about that on my podcast before. You're willing to put in the reps. You're willing to put in the time to achieve that next level for you. And I think in medicine, once you graduate residency, you say to yourself, I've done the work, Harry. I've done the work. I've done my time. Now it's a roller coaster. It's just a smooth ride till I retire. And that's completely not it. So nuanced personality is that, you know, you have to find something novel in your day or in your practice that keeps you looking for more, keeps you looking for that next step. And that, I think, is so critical as it relates to burnout. Is we just kind of coast through medicine, and then you're wondering why you're still doing the same thing you are 5 years from now rather as the same as what you're doing currently. Well, because you've not done anything. You've not done anything differently. You're staying the same. Then you're wondering, why am I burning out? Because you're not doing anything different. So part of the problem is many of us, like many of your listeners are, they're always looking for more. They're high achievers, they're goal setters. But for medicine, if you don't continue that after you finish your residency, you're gonna burn out. There's no other way to say it.
So you have to, I guess, find a way to constantly keep reigniting your passion, right? Because, and I've heard you say this before, but this is sort of the staple of success secrets, is that success is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So what I always encourage, you know, some of the younger physicians is, you know, understand that, you know, if you're a physician or if you're a nurse, you are a leader. You are a leader. You don't need a title. You are a leader. Just reaching the status that you've achieved, you are a leader. So take that opportunity to lead and see if it's something that you enjoy. Do you enjoy teaching? Well, no one's going to come to you and say, all right, teach us. Go out and do it. Take time to spend time with your nurses doing bedside teaching. Spend time with your patients to do some teaching. In the hustle of bustle of medicine, we sometimes forget that. So take every opportunity that you have to find something in your field that excites you. For us in emergency medicine, there's always an opportunity to learn. You need to get better at this particular procedure, to get a little bit better with this procedure. We'll learn it, you know, get better at it. Go to a conference that will teach you how to get you to that next level. And it's this, you know, we call it occupational wellness and intellectual wellness. Keep your mind going. And some of the best stories I hear from some of our older physicians who are in their 70s and still operating, and they just love the stuff. They just love it because they're always learning. I mean, the way they're operating now is absolutely not the way they learned, you know, 40 years ago, but they continue to learn. And that's what I always encourage them. You have to find something in your specialty that sparks your interest and go down that rabbit hole. You're going to be surprised what you're going to find.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. And speaking of education, Dr. Harry, I was a little surprised, and you can even say disappointed, to hear you say that now you see in burnout earlier and earlier. You're starting to see it in medical students.
Right. And this is one of the most amazing things that I've learned during, you know, my study of burnout is burnout was once a mid-career problem. This was, doctors who've been doing this for 15 years, maybe 20 years, that's when they'd start to burn out. But we're seeing burnout in medical schools nowadays, which is mind-boggling. You may be saying to yourself, I remember thinking to myself in medical school, like, I couldn't wait to be able to go practice medicine. But there's some studies that are showing that 1 out of every 4 medical students are experiencing symptoms of burnout. I'm thinking, like, what is going on? What is going on? You haven't even laid hands on a patient yet. What is it that is troubling you? And that area is what I'm looking to help break through, because once they reach that level of doctor, if you don't have the skills yet to prepare yourself to become a physician with all the stresses that it has, you don't have the skills yet, you are going to wither. You are. So that's really a lot of the audience that I look forward to, is the medical students and the residents, the young doctors, because that's where the key is. If we can get them to build these habits, build these rituals early on, I think they're going to be so much happier as they go through their career. There was a study that had just come out, I believe late last year, if not early this year, where they had surveyed a group of graduating senior emergency medicine residents. And 87%, I believe it was 87%, of those residents are experiencing one symptom of burnout. 87%, that's essentially all of them. And these physicians, they're, if you're a resident, you're considered a physician because you graduated medical school, but you can't practice solo yet. But these guys are, young men and women are just in the next coming months going to be on their own, practicing under their own license, and they're already experiencing burnout. What is it? What is it that they are lacking? And what is it that I can help with? That's really been my mission for them, is how can I help you build a foundation, a strong foundation, so you can start the next chapter of your life strong.
And do you think that's something that can eventually be implemented into that education journey?
I think it's actually a necessity. It must be put into their curriculum. Medical school is just giving you the medicine, giving you the tools to become a doctor. And we forget the other stuff. That's why, this is completely on a different tangent, but that's why many of us, the horrible generalization that we make of physician is we're horrible with money. And that's true, because that's not where our mind has been. Our mind has been in the sciences and in the math from a young age. So personal finance is somewhat of a mystery for us. So I talk about that on my blog and my podcast too, but because we're not taught it, in medical school, I can very clearly remember, we went through the entire, for example, let's discuss physiology or pathophysiology. We went through the entire semester's college worth, 18 weeks of a college class of pathophysiology. We went through it in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks in medical school. It's the speed and the volume of information that you are required to learn in medical school to get you to that level. So I could understand medical schools have a hard time, weaving this into their curriculum, but it's an absolute must if you want to grow physicians for the next generation. So it's not only a good suggestion, I think it's a must.
And what do you say to someone that says, well, Dr. Harry, I just don't have the time to go to those conferences or learn more, right? Because if medical school was grueling, actually practicing is even more so, and I just can't possibly do it.
Sure. And I will tell you, I will push back on that every single time. You do have the time, is you have to say to yourself what's important for you. And if you actually plot out your week, you're going to realize you have quite a bit of time. It's the same comment that we hear about, you don't have time to work out. And I will push back on that every single time. Does it mean you have to get up an hour earlier? Yeah, it does. But it's far easier to prevent a problem than to fix a problem. So, when you're 20, 30 pounds overweight with diabetes and high blood pressure because you've not taken the time to work on the self, then we have to really be honest and look at ourselves. So, but I do understand though that, to get on a plane and fly to a conference can be difficult. I understand that. Luckily, we're using, as we are right now, we're using the world of technology, which, in light of COVID, we've all become very, very comfortable with it nowadays. But I will say yes, it's a consideration, but I think if you use that as your default answer, I think you're kidding yourself. Part of what I do though is I give it to you in short little chunks. I give my resources in short little chunks every single week. So there are resources out there, and that's what I try to create every single week for my audience. Is my goal, my goal for any physician, nurse, or paramedic who comes to my website is I want them to give them the tools so they can build their own curriculum. But you have to build that curriculum yourself. I will give you the tools. I'll walk with you on that journey, because we are on different paths of our journey. My goals are going to be different than your goals. My vision is going to be different than yours, but my schedule is different. I worked a day shift yesterday. I'm working an overnight shift tomorrow. So the way I do my week is going to be very different than the family physician who has a clinic 9 to 6 every day, or that surgeon who's on call 24 hours. So I have to be cognizant of that. I have to be mindful of that, and I have to provide them resources that they're able to create their own curriculum. So that's what I do. But time is a funny little thing. I think we've just become so accustomed to saying that, well, I've got no time. And we've not really sat down and actually looked at how we spend our time. There's actually quite a bit of technology that actually can tell you how much time you're wasting on things. There's an app that I always recommend my listeners to, and that's called Toggl, Toggl, Toggl. It's an app that you put on your phone. If you're an iPhone user, it's similar to that little message that the Apple people give you every weekend. You've been on the phone X amount of hours this week. Toggl actually breaks it down for you very, very specifically, how much time you're on social media, how much time you're on Facebook, how much time you're on email. And it's going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind how much time you're on your phone. And just a quick little thing that I always do, and I always tell the people that I work with, my doctors and physicians, is that phone is not by me when I go to bed. That phone is in the bathroom. I'm a medical director, so I had to be accessible, but I put my ringer on loud, and my staff knows that if they need to reach me, it's a phone call. It's not a text, because I'm not going to respond to the text. But my first hour of the day is without that phone. I have my morning ritual and I have my evening ritual, but I don't even look at that phone for an hour of my day. And I'm very good about that. And because I'm in charge of my day. And once I look at the phone, now I'm responding to other people's problems, not focusing on myself. So, I'm going to push back on it when people tell me I don't have time, because I don't think that's completely honest if we actually take the time and find where you're spending your time.
No, that's fair. And I've actually encouraged people to cut out a lot of the digital noise in their own life. And then I heard you talk about that on the podcast, and I realized I wasn't doing enough myself. So I had to even tweak some things. And, it's a constant, not struggle, it's just constant work to build those habits.
Absolutely. And am I good at, do I get it 100% of the time? Gosh, no. But I'm at least mindful of it. And I know that I could always improve. One of the things that I always talk about is always trying to be 1% better today. Am I 1% better today than I was yesterday? If I am, it's a win. I'm not looking for 10% better today. I'm just looking for 1% better today.
Absolutely. And Dr. Harry, because I've actually, in preparing for our conversation, I listened to a few of the episodes, and I find, even though they're very specific for the medical professional, there's a lot of wisdom and success secrets in there that everyone can benefit. So if the curriculum you're trying to create for the doctors, if it's unique for each doctor, can you say that it actually has a wider application? And that,
yeah,
would you encourage more people to listen and check it out?
I would absolutely, and I would love it if I had more people listening. Really, what I'm trying to focus people on is exactly what you had mentioned earlier. We are all busy, and every time I hear, when I greet somebody and oh, how's your day? Oh, busy, so very busy. I kind of in myself kind of just roll my eyes, not because they're not busy. I know they're busy, but I'm busy, you're busy, everyone's busy. But then ask yourself, why are there some people in your circle who are just nailing it? Why are there some people in your circle, in your same profession, that are just stars, and some who struggle? In emergency medicine, we have people that just love the stuff. They just love working in medicine, but they get their charting done in time. They're not behind on their charts. They see their patients, they reevaluate their patients quickly. How are they doing it? And it's just a matter of being intentional. So absolutely the stuff that I talk about has a broader audience. Absolutely. And it's being intentional. What is it that you are doing with your life with intention? And is it, and this is very important, is it getting you to your goals? Is it getting you closer to your goals? Are you getting somebody else closer to their goals, right? Are your goals not being accomplished because you're helping somebody else achieve their goals? Well, then we got to struggle there. How are we gonna navigate that? And I get some pushback and I get some comments on some of the stuff that I put out, because it seems almost selfish when I say, like, it's time to put you as the number one priority. And people think, oh my God, that's very selfish. It's not selfish. If I am not well, I cannot be well for others. I can't serve others if I am not well. It's just inconsistent. I cannot give my full self to others if I am not well. And it comes down to rituals, it comes down to habits. And that's what I encourage my listeners to, but absolutely does have a broader impact on a number of people for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, and the links are in the show description to the podcast and to the Medicine Revive website, and we'll talk more about it throughout it. But as I'm sure people have already picked up on, you are very well spoken and a great storyteller. So I think there's a lot to be learned from you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I would definitely encourage everyone outside of the medical profession to check out Dr. Harry's stuff as well. Dr. Harry, what you said about being selfish is actually interesting, because I felt the same way. And then I realized, they tell you on the plane, in case of an emergency, you have to put on your mask, your oxygen mask first before helping others. So I've decided for myself that it's actually the most selfless act is to build yourself first, because it's the only way you're going to be able to help others.
Yeah. Well said. That's a great analogy. It's perfectly said. And what happens is you end up trying to defend your actions to people. Hey, why are you doing this? Why are you going to go work out? Why are you going to do this? Well, because I'm caring for myself. And that's so important, because I can't be here for you if I'm not here for me. One of the things that I always encourage my colleagues and my friends is, if you have a significant other, to sit down with them every single week and plot out your week so there are no surprises. So I just did this with my wife just yesterday. We have a weekly, we call them mini dates, but in reality it's a home meeting, and we've got it down to a science now. We've been doing this for a long, long time. But what we do is we sit down every Sunday. If I'm at home, I worked a day shift yesterday, so we did it Sunday evening. And we print out our Google Calendar for the week, not any longer, just 1 week. She prints out hers, I print out mine. We share our calendars, but we each have our own copy. And we go through it hour by hour every single day. When I'm going to get up, when she's going to get up, when we're going to get our workout set. I'm going to get my workout in at 5 o'clock today. Oh, I was thinking about doing my workout at 5 o'clock. Okay, fine. Then I'm going to do mine this hour. But it answers a lot of questions. The worst thing that could be is, I'm off to work, or, probably more likely than anything is I'm off to a meeting. I work administratively. So I have a meeting that pops up, and then my wife has no idea that a meeting has popped up. And then she had planned something to do with herself or spent some time for herself, which is, I always encourage some solitude time. I love my family. I love them dearly, but the importance of solitude cannot be overstated. But so having that weekly meeting helps a lot of the angst that I think many of us in the world of medicine specifically have. We want to be there for other people, but you really want a little bit of alone time. You want a little bit of an hour just carved out for yourself, just to be with yourself, to pray, to meditate, whatever you want to do. But we almost feel like we have to ask permission. We're not asking permission if you've already scheduled it. And we do that with my wife, and she has her own time too. And I encourage that for her too, because she needs to be 100% for herself so she can be good for us and the children.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. I know you've told me offline that one of the challenges that you sort of struggle with, although it sounds like in what you just described, you've resolved most of it, but finding that work-life balance.
Yeah. And it's a continuous process of improvement. And again, does our does the way we plot out our week always work? Gosh, no, of course not. It'd be silly to think that it would. But if we have if we're 90% good on it, I think I think that we consider that a success. But it is hard because administratively, sometimes things come up at last minute sometimes, and I just have to tend to them. So we just, the great thing about, my wife and I is we're really good at communicating with each other, and we're not afraid to have those hard conversations. Hey, Harry, I wanted to spend some time to go work out or just be outside or go out in the garden, and now I can't because of this. We'll work it out, but it is a challenge, but it's so worth it, because if you don't address it, then it becomes this elephant in the room that both people, the family knows about it, but nobody wants to talk about it. That just only adds to your burnout. If I want to go out with a friend of mine, for example, for dinner after work, if I know I have that 2 hours, time slot after work for my time, I could do it any way I want to, and so I don't feel like, honey, can I go out with, so-and-so? We've already scheduled that out. So it doesn't become these awkward conversations anymore. But it is a challenge. Of course, it's a challenge. But if you're open to the idea and you're intentional about it, the first thing you need to do is actually sit down with your significant other and have that first meeting. And it's going to be clunky. It's going to be very, very clunky. I would plot out at least an hour to do that first home meeting, because that first meeting should be your dream meeting, your vision meeting. And what I always tell folks who I work with to get on this first meeting is plot out your vision. If my vision is to live in a cabin in the woods, and my wife is like, "Are you kidding me? I hate bears." Well, that needs to come out. That needs to come out on that first meeting, or you're going to be trying to reach a goal that is not consistent with each other. So have your dream meeting, have your vision meeting with your significant other, and make it a special day. Make a day of it. Go out to a restaurant, have your vision meeting, and it just makes the future meeting so much better, because we're going for a common goal, a common vision, if you will.
And do you think, not to sort of go too much off on a tangent into relationships, but I'm just curious because I'm realizing this and I'm hearing this a lot now, that it starts with building a foundation of common values rather than common interests necessarily?
Exactly right. And are we on the same page? Exactly right. Are you on the same page for your values? Are you on the same page with where we want our next 5 years to be? And nothing in that conversation is, well, I want to have a Ferrari 5 years from now. It's not that. I want to live a successful, fruitful life with you. And what does that look like to you? Does that look like, me working less? Is that me working the same amount as I'm working now? Those are the things that really drive me to serve more people. It's not about the things. It's really, really not about the things. It's about, are we on this journey together? And again, if you don't have a significant other, that's fine. Share it with a friend, but are you sharing your goals and your values and your dreams with somebody else? And I think that's so important. I think that's so powerful. To have an accountability partner is so vital for someone's success. And for me, I've been blessed. I have a wonderful wife who supports me, and I support her. But for marriages that are strained, perhaps, I really encourage many people to just have that meeting, just to have that sit-down meeting, and have that conversation. What is our vision for this family? And a lot's going to come out of that meeting that maybe you didn't know, or maybe it actually illuminates a lot of things, like, hey, we want the same things. Why are we struggling with this? And it's just such an important meeting to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for indulging that little tangent. So, Doctor, I guess with everything that's happened in the last 6 months, have the things that you set up for yourself to deal with burnout has actually helped you deal with the last 6 months?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely, and I feel it's also helped a lot of my colleagues as well too. Is when when chaos erupts, um, you have to have a set of skills to help you with that chaos. And the false assumption in medicine is you can handle the chaos. And yes and no. You may be able to manage patients when it's chaotic. I get that. That's the crux of what I do. But is your mind racing after a shift? And if it is, why is it racing? How do we calm that mind down? Or, one thing that one thing I can tell you very vividly is sometimes after a very busy shift, um, I'll sit in my car and my mind is just bzzz, and I can still feel the vibration. I feel vibration in my body, which is still probably the adrenaline that's going through my bloodstream. And I can't bring that home. It's not healthy for me and it's not healthy for my family. I can't bring that energy back home. So I meditate and I pray. I use the Headspace app on my phone. Headspace is a meditation app that gives you guided meditation. And that's been instrumental for me. It helps calm that racing mind. But even on my days off, I think there's a tendency to just consume as much information as you can. Like, let's use COVID, for example. This has been on everyone's mind for the past 6 months or so. Is on my days off, I've been very good and very intentional about not looking at anything. I'm not interested in what the trajectory of COVIDs are. I'm not interested in what the number of positives in my area are. On my day off, on the days that I'm on, that's important for me to know. But on my days off, I try to keep work from work and I try to keep home. And that has been instrumental for me. That's really what I've been encouraging a lot of my colleagues to do, is leave work at work. It's possible. It's absolutely possible, but you have to be intentional about it. Create the habits to do that. So, now with the electronic medical record, we very easily could get on our home computer and do our charting at home. We very easily can get our computer and check up on a patient. And I always, always, always discourage that. Leave your work at work, leave your home at home. And if you have to stay another half an hour after your shift to finish your charts, do it. Do it, because it's a very nice clean separation from the two. And that has been so critical for me, especially during this pandemic that we're going through.
Did you find it frustrating then, all the noise and all the negativity and all the fighting surrounding it? Because you were someone on the front lines actually having to deal with it every day.
I'm not going to say I'm frustrated or angry about it. It's just, it is what it is. We're gonna get through it, and we're here to take care of people. We're here to take care of patients, and it's when I'm there, when I'm working, my job there is as a doctor, as a physician, and my goal is to help people any way that I can, be it physically or mentally. I'm there to help them. I'm less interested in what people's perceptions are, or other people's perceptions are of it. I'm there to take care of you, for whatever way I can. So I never really let that get to me. I don't get involved in it. I don't go down that rabbit hole with people. I'm there to help you, and if any way I can, I'm happy to do it. But we've definitely seen some sick patients over the past several months. And we're gonna keep healing people as best we can, and we have to heal ourselves too, and that's important too. And especially over this past pandemic, we've seen a lot of fatalities, and you need some resources to help you get through that. And a lot of times it's just community. It's the value of being around each other. And I know, we're trying to socially distance each other, but that doesn't mean you can't pick up a phone and see how your buddy's doing. That doesn't mean I can't Zoom call my buddy, see how they're doing. That's reaching out too, and that's important. So that's what I have to say about that.
No, that's a great and responsible answer, I think. We need more of that, especially in times of great challenges. So yeah. So then I guess with that, Dr. Harry, what can we do to support doctors? Because I think it's interesting that you said that you want to separate work and home, so you weren't paying attention to the COVID numbers, yet they're thrown into the face of the public every single day for the last 6 months. So, are you suggesting that we tune some of that stuff out too?
Well, uh, in regards to how do you support your physician or your nurse is to just that, just support them. Know if you're there seeking help, accept their help, and in the best way that you can. And that's my only request. And that's the same thing that I would say for teachers. Support your teachers. Here in the U.S., people have very strong opinions and emotions on, should the children go back to live classes or should we go to remote classes? Remember, there's a teacher there. There's a teacher there, there to teach your child. And sometimes in very well-intentioned emotions, we forget that the people are here to serve you and help you. So what I would say is, support your physician as best you can. Understand that, they're going through a lot of stress, as you are. Understandably, you are going through a lot of stress and challenges yourself too. But lean on them for the information that they have, and at least maybe appreciate that they may have some information you may not. Now, we can get into the weeds and say what the accuracy of some information is or not, but just understand that we're practicing the way we're interpreting the information as we know it now. I can tell you the way we're practicing now is very different than the way we were practicing in February, at least here in the Midwest. And that's because we're learning. We're learning every single week. We're learning every single week about how this virus is affecting people. So, have there been some changes in the way we treat patients? Of course we did. And I would hope we would. I hope that's the magic of medicine. That's one of the loves I have about medicine is, I'm going to be practicing differently 5 years from now than I am today. Why? Because there's new information that comes out. New techniques are going to come out. New research comes out. And we just have to take it week by week and day by day as we get it and adjust your practice as you can. So understand that, we don't have all the answers. We don't. And but we're doing the best we can with what we have.
Dr. Harry, with all of that, why are you optimistic about the future?
Because in all of it, though, Yuri, at the heart of medicine is the heart of medicine. It's something we don't talk about. But to have a person who has a heart for serving people, has a heart for helping people, no matter what's going on, whatever war, pandemic, challenges that face us, the service of others will always be there. There is always an opportunity to serve others. And if you try to put some of that other noise that we talked about throughout this past hour, put some of that noise behind you, and always remember, why is it that you entered medicine? And if you have a heart for it, you have a heart for helping people, then that will never change. We're going to have stress today. We're going to have stress tomorrow. We're going to have stress, a year from now. But how are you navigating that stress? How are you taking care of yourself so you can serve the people that you've wanted to serve ever since you were a young child?
And I guess that service is exactly why you're building out the Medicine Revive platform. And I know you actually had to put that on hold because of COVID, but now you're able to focus on it more.
Yeah, absolutely. And my goal is to have the largest megaphone I can for people to, reach out to me and read what I've written and to listen to what I've talked about, because there are things that are available there for you that even if you take one thing away from something I've written or something I've talked about, and that's a win for me. If it makes you change your mindset just a little bit, saying like, I've never tried that. I'll give that a try. A great example here is that of journaling. Prior to this journey of mine, I never really looked at journaling as anything worthwhile, perhaps. There's maybe a little bit of woo-woo for me, if you will. But then I started journaling, and one thing that I always encourage people to do is to start journaling. And what scares a lot of us, as especially in healthcare, is we are very black and white. We like things very black and white. We're not, I can only speak for myself, but we're not comfortable with the gray a lot of times. So the fear with journaling, I think for many people in healthcare is they're afraid of the blank page. You open up a journal like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And again, knowing this and of myself too, I'm very math and science focused. Writing is not my forte. So now you're asking somebody who doesn't like creative writing. Now you give them a blank page and say, okay, go journal, trust me, it's going to work. It's just not useful. So what I always encourage people to do is to start off with something called the 5-minute journal, and it's on Amazon. And it's, I think, $29 in the US. And it's just that, it's 5 minutes. They give you, I think, 3 writing prompts in the morning and 2 writing prompts in the evening. And they only give you 2 lines to write what that writing prompt was. And it lasts you no more than 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. And I always joke with people who ask me about journaling is I have no idea how this company stays in business. And the reason why I say that is the journal is meant to last you 3 months. And after 3 months, I have no idea how many repeat buyers that they have, because after that 3 months, you're going to realize how awesome journaling is, that you're going to buy a regular journal, a blank journal. You're not going to buy another 5-minute journal because you're like, this, you'll see, I would encourage you to do it. You're going to see as you finish your months of the 5-minute journal, you're going to start writing more below the lines that they give you. You're going to start writing on the sides of the page, and you're going to realize the huge benefits you have of journaling. For me, I have a small little journal that I keep in my white coat, and I just doodle and I just put in my notes, my thoughts. And it's just that action of pen to paper to just offload some of that stuff that's in your brain on a piece of paper, I think has been very powerful for me. So I really encourage your listeners, and as I do for mine as well, to really look into things like journaling. Such a simple thing that's helped me, especially during this COVID pandemic, to help me get to a better place.
No, that's great advice. It's actually on my list of like habits to build up. I just started this week, and right now all it is just where I want to be in, like 6 months, specific 6 month goals and the type of day I want to have. But I think I'm going to try this 5-minute journal thing.
I'm telling you, it's a game changer. If you even just thought of it, just like, I wonder, what is this journaling everyone keeps talking about? Just pick up the 5-minute journal. You're going to see, you're going to wake up in the morning, and it's going to be one of the first things you do in the morning, because it's easy, it's quick, and it just gets thoughts on paper. It's a great way to start your day.
That's awesome. And Dr. Harry, what does success mean to you?
Success for me means, living a life financially well, but it's a life that I wake up in the morning and saying, yes. That's success for me is waking up in the morning and saying, yes. One of the questions I always kid with patients is, I ask them, well, how are you doing? And a lot of times the common response they give me is, well, better than you. And I always retort back with them, tell them that, it's always better to be on this side of the bed than on your side of the bed, and I kid with them, but there's so much truth in that. If I'm able to get up on my 2 feet, that's a win. That's success for me. But long-term success for me to be able to promote what I'm promoting to the people that want to hear it, to the physicians throughout the world, to the nurses throughout the world, because each of us have different challenges. And for somebody to seek me out to help them in their success makes me the happiest person in the world. If I could help somebody achieve their wellness, makes me so happy. To help them get them out of those dark days of the black hole of burnout. Your physician burnout is growing exponentially. And if in my little way I can help maybe prevent that, or have somebody who's going through those dark days reach out and say, hey, I need help. That to me is the best success I could ever have for me. It's just so heartwarming as I'm saying it to you, that if somebody would even reach out to me as they're going through that dark day of burnout, saying, I need some help, Harry. And what you wrote about or what you talked about on your last podcast, really made me reach out. That is the epitome of success for me.
And Dr. Harry, what's the best way to stay in touch? I know we have all the things in the show notes, but do you want to just quickly go through it?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best ways, if you are interested in learning more specifically how to start building your curriculum toward wellness. Again, as you're saying, this is, can be much broader to than just the healthcare professional. Or if you have somebody in your family or friend who is a healthcare professional, please share with them. But I've created a free 3-video series for your listeners. And the way they can access it is actually just texting the word 3 videos. That's the numeral 3 videos, all one word. And you can text it to 44222. And that's the word 3 videos, numeral 3 videos to 44222. That's probably the quickest way you can get yourself started on this journey, by having these 3 videos that are actionable for you after each video. And that gets you started on this road. As you mentioned, I do have a podcast, and it shares the same name as my blog, which is Medicine Revived. It's on all the major platforms, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Those are the big ones, at least here in the US. And again, my blog as well, which is medicinerevive.com. Those are probably the 3 easiest way. I'm on all the major social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with that same handle, Medicine Revived.
Yeah, and if anyone just missed what Dr. Harry just went through rather quickly, all of the information is in the show notes, so you can definitely check it out. So Dr. Harry, I know we're almost out of time, but if you just allow just a couple more questions to wrap it up.
Go ahead. I'm happy to talk as much as you need.
The first is being, what advice would you have to that 30-year-old, maybe doctor, or maybe just professional guy who's just feeling stuck and maybe a little bit awkward and out of place?
Yeah. My question for you is, what are you doing today that's different than yesterday? And if you can't answer that, or if your answer is nothing, I'm not doing anything different today than I was doing yesterday, that's where the magic is, friend. That's where your magic is. You have to work on getting yourself better today than you were yesterday. And I'm not talking about leaps and bounds. I'm just talking, what are you doing different? If you want to say to yourself, hey, Harry, I want to start working out. Well, get yourself up early, 15 minutes early, 30 minutes early. And again, don't get held up on the perfect program. You're never going to find it. So let's use the example of working out. That's a common struggle that many of us have. I want to work out more, Harry. Okay, why? You have to understand your why. What is your why? What is your why? Why do you want to work out more? Is it because you want to be healthier, or do you want to look better for other people? It can be both, but you have to be very clear on what your why is and how are you going to get there. And those are the things I would tell you is, what are you doing different today than yesterday? If you're not doing anything different yesterday, then what you are today is what you're doing yesterday. What is your goal? What is your goal? What is your why? And how are you going to get yourself there?
And on a personal note, who will Dr. Harry Karydes be in 5 years?
So what I hope to be is working clinically. I still enjoy working in clinical medicine. I get up in the morning excited to go to work. I still enjoy doing that. But more specifically though, I want to be the voice for physicians as it relates to wellness. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to create, a platform for people to come and reach me, be it speaking, be it courses, be it conferences. That's where I think I'll get my most service to others, is how can I serve you more? So I do want to work clinically still, but I want to expand my current platform and reaching as many physicians as nurses as I can. And that's either through developing courses, collaborating with other people, and speaking. Those are where I see myself in 5 years.
That's incredible. I'm really excited. And of course, the podcast is Medicine Revived. The platform is medicinerevived.com. There's a blog there and all sorts of resources. Terry, I really appreciate all your time today. And I just want to ask any final words that you'd have for the listeners.
I think we're all going with our own struggles, and understand that you are not alone with your struggles. And the important thing is to be part of a community. It's so important to be part of a community. And now it's so easy to join a community, be it virtual or be live. But I will tell you, if you are struggling with something, please reach out. Please reach out to somebody, a close friend or a confidant, and just work through it with them. But also, there are resources that are available to you, and I'm happy to be one of those resources to help you gain that next level that you're looking for. Always keep working, friends. Always keep working to become 1% better than you were yesterday. And I think you're going to be on your road to success and achieving the goals and visions that you've created for yourself.
Wow. And with that, Dr. Harry, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure and an inspiration, and I'm really excited for all your success in the future and for you to inspire as many people as possible.
I appreciate you. Thank you for the time. Thank you so much for letting me speak with your audience.
And for everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you like what you heard, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, formerly known as iTunes. And to hear more meaningful conversations with real people like Dr. Harry, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you might be listening and share it with a friend. That's all. Goodbye for now.